What if the silence they left behind isn't a sign of peace, but proof they're still hurting inside? You've been watching them, pretending they've moved on, acting unaffected, almost like you never mattered. And deep down, it tears at you. Because if they really cared, wouldn't they show it? Wouldn't they reach out, say something, anything? But all you're met with is silence. And in that silence, your mind races, wondering if they ever felt what you did, if it was all one-sided. But here's the truth no one tells you. That silence might be hiding a storm they don't know how to face. People who avoid emotions aren't stronger. They're not more healed. They've just learned to bury pain so deeply it becomes invisible to you, to everyone, even to themselves. They disconnect because feeling would break them open. They shut down because confronting their emotions would make them vulnerable, and vulnerability feels unsafe, especially after loss. So instead, they act calm, distant, composed. But don't mistake that for peace. It's not peace. It's protection. It's armor. And sometimes the thicker the armor, the more wounded the person wearing it. Right now, you might be blaming yourself. You might be thinking you weren't enough. That if you had done more, loved harder, been better, maybe they would have stayed. But pain doesn't always show itself the way you expect. People who feel deeply sometimes hide the most. And those who look fine are often the ones silently falling apart when no one's looking. Not everyone cries, not everyone begs. Some simply vanish, hoping distance will numb the ache they can't handle. You see, avoidants don't process pain like most people. They run from it. They hide in routines, distractions, even new relationships. Anything that keeps them from feeling the full weight of what's been lost. But running doesn't mean healing. And pretending doesn't mean peace. Their silence might not be a message to you. It might be a message to themselves. I can't face this. And that's not rejection. That's fear. So if you're sitting there wondering why it still hurts, why it feels unfinished, why your heart keeps reaching out even when they won't, it's because there's still truth between you. Unspoken, unresolved truth. And they feel it too, even if they'll never say it, even if they can't. Stay with this message. Because by the end, you're going to see something clearly that the way they're acting isn't about your worth. It's about their wounds. And when you truly understand what's happening behind their silence, you'll finally stop chasing their validation and start claiming your power. There's freedom in truth. And that truth is coming. Don't turn away now. What you're about to realize can change the way you see them, and more importantly, the way you see yourself. Keep listening, because this story isn't over, and neither are you. They didn't walk away because they didn't care. They walked away because caring too much felt dangerous. Being close, being vulnerable, it scares them. It brings up emotions they've spent years trying to suppress. When they were with you, they felt seen. And for someone who's spent most of their life avoiding real emotional connection, that's terrifying. So they shut the door, not to escape you, but to escape what you made them feel. And now they pretend they're fine. But they're not. They're hurting quietly, deeply, in places they won't admit exist. Not to you. Not to anyone. Not even to themselves. Avoidants don't disappear because they're strong. They disappear because they're overwhelmed. Emotional closeness exposes their deepest fears of abandonment, of not being enough, of being judged. So instead of leaning in, they pull away. Instead of saying, I'm hurting, they say nothing. Instead of asking for support, they retreat into isolation. This is how they've survived. This is their armor. But underneath that armor is someone who still feels, still remembers, still breaks. They just hide it differently. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They bury their pain in routines that numb instead of heal. And if you've been wondering why they seem so cold, so distant, so unreachable, it's because closeness feels unsafe. Connection feels like a threat. They weren't taught to lean on others. They were taught to protect themselves at all costs. So, after a breakup, when emotions rise and vulnerability knocks, their instinct isn't to talk or to cry. Their instinct is to shut down. They run from memories, from reminders, from anything that brings your presence back into their mind. But that's not because you meant nothing. It's because you meant too much. And they don't know how to hold that truth without falling apart. You might think they let go easily, but they didn't. They just pushed everything down. Because for them, avoidance is easier than grief. Detachment is safer than feeling. But safe doesn't mean healed. And silence doesn't mean over. Somewhere deep inside, they're still carrying the weight of what happened. The questions. The moments. The emotions they never gave words to. And even if they'll never admit it, part of them still feels the pull, the ache, the loss. They just don't have the tools to face it. And you, standing on the other side of that silence. You've been looking for signs, for proof, for closure. But the real closure begins when you realize their silence, is not your failure. Their distance is not your rejection. Their avoidance is not your reflection. It's their pattern, their fear, their wound. You gave them something real, something rare, and maybe they couldn't hold it. Maybe they weren't ready. But that doesn't make your love small. That doesn't make your worth less. Don't let their fear become your story. Don't let their silence become your identity. You are not here to chase what hides. You are here to rise. Keep rising. You were never too much. You were just more than they were ready to hold. And that difference isn't a flaw. It's a mirror. It shows you the gap between your capacity to feel and their capacity to face what they feel. The way they withdrew, the way they vanished without closure, the way they seemed fine. It wasn't indifference. It was defense. When avoidants hurt, they don't scream. They don't reach out. They collapse inward. They build walls because building bridges feels too exposed. They protect the wound instead of healing it, afraid that letting someone close again will reopen what they barely survived. Right now, you might be doubting your impact. You might be telling yourself it meant nothing to them. But pain doesn't always show up as tears or apologies. Sometimes it shows up as silence, as absence, as coldness. These are not signs of peace. They are signs of pain disguised as self-control. And it's time you stop mistaking their emotional shutdown for strength. It's time you stop translating their distance as a message about your value. Their avoidance is not a reflection of your love. It's a reflection of their fear of being known, their fear of being hurt again, their fear of being vulnerable enough to truly connect. You loved them deeply, and that love didn't disappear just because they couldn't receive it. It didn't lose its worth because it wasn't returned in the way you needed. You gave them a chance to step into something real, and that's a gift. One they might not recognize now, but one they will remember when silence stops working. Because it will. Sooner or later, what's buried demands to be felt. Sooner or later, the pain they tried to outrun will catch up. And in that moment, your presence in their story will echo louder than any words they never said. You can't control how they deal with their wounds, but you can choose not to carry their silence as your shame. You can choose to break the cycle of overthinking, of self-blame, of believing love has to be earned by suffering. You don't have to shrink just because they couldn't expand. You don't have to close off your heart just because theirs was already closed. You were brave enough to feel, brave enough to love, brave enough to stay open in a world that teaches people to hide. That's your power. That's your edge. Not everyone can hold that kind of depth, but you can. And from that depth, something new can rise. Not a version of you that's harder, colder, or more detached, but one that's wiser, stronger, more grounded. You don't need their validation. You don't need closure from someone who wasn't capable of giving it. The closure is in knowing you showed up fully. And that's rare. That's bold. That's beautiful. Hold on to that truth. Let it carry you forward. Because the next chapter isn't about them. It's about you becoming more of who you were always meant to be. Healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means remembering without breaking. It means standing in the middle of what tried to tear you apart and choosing not to shrink. You were left in the silence, in the space between what was said and what was meant, in the weight of unanswered questions that echo in your chest. But silence is not a verdict. It's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a deeper truth, that even in the absence of closure, you can create meaning. Even in the absence of an apology, you can choose peace. You are not powerless in your pain. You are powerful because of how you rise through it. You don't need to hear they're hurting to know they are. Avoidants don't grieve like others do. They grieve in shadows where no one can see. They tell themselves it's over, but they carry the weight of what they pushed away. They distract. They detach. But every time they sit still, the ache finds them. They feel the gap where your energy used to be. And because they never fully processed it, the pain lives on in fragments, quiet but constant. They scroll past memories like they mean nothing. But their nervous system still flinches at the sound of your name. That's not healing. That's suppression. And what's suppressed will always resurface. But this isn't about them anymore. This is about you reclaiming yourself. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in truth. You were not hard to love. You were ready for something they couldn't meet. You brought honesty to a place where they were still hiding. You showed up with a heart open, while theirs was locked behind fear. And when it ended, you didn't run. You felt everything. You faced what they avoided. That alone sets you apart. That alone means you're growing in ways they haven't even started. Real growth doesn't always feel triumphant. Sometimes it feels like stillness after a storm, like waking up and choosing not to beg for answers, like breathing deeper, even with the ache, like trusting that what broke you is also building you, piece by piece, day by day. Because healing isn't about rushing ahead. It's about standing where you are and saying, I deserve more. I deserve connection that feels safe. I deserve love that doesn't hide. I deserve a version of life that doesn't require me to shrink for someone else's comfort. There's strength in soft hearts. There's power in staying open after pain. And even though it hurts now, the pain is proof that you cared, that you showed up, that you tried. And the one who shows up will always rise, no matter how long it takes. Keep rising. Not to prove anything, not to make them see, but because this is your path, this is your healing. And every step you take in truth brings you closer to the life, the peace, the love you've always deserved. Keep going. You're almost there. There's a quiet kind of strength in surviving what was never acknowledged, in holding space for a goodbye that never came, in sitting with emotions that had no place to land because the other person refused to face them. You didn't just lose someone. You carried the weight of their avoidance, their silence, their inability to process the damage they left behind. And still, you stood in that emptiness. You didn't numb yourself to escape. You didn't fake peace to look strong. You felt it all. That kind of courage is rare. That kind of presence is powerful. Because feeling deeply when it would be easier to shut down is a form of transformation most people never reach. Avoidants aren't heartless, but they are disconnected. From themselves, from their patterns, from the truth that relationships demand more than avoidance can offer. When they push love away, they convince themselves it's safer that way. They label intensity as danger. They mistake closeness for control. And they run, not because they don't feel, but because feeling exposes a part of them they've spent years avoiding. You were never the threat. Intimacy was. And when intimacy asks someone to show up fully, those who are still trapped in fear will retreat, even from the ones who love them most. But that doesn't mean your love was wasted. Love is never wasted. Love always leaves an imprint, not just on them, but on you. It teaches you. It deepens you. It peels back the layers that no longer serve you. It shows you who you are when the masks come off, when expectations fall away, when you're asked to stay rooted while someone else drifts. The lesson isn't about making others stay. It's about learning not to abandon yourself when they leave. It's about staying committed to your own healing, even when they won't do the same. The pain you're carrying isn't weakness. It's evidence that you cared, that you tried, that you opened your heart and offered something real. And that matters, even if they never said thank you, even if they never came back, even if they don't know how to grieve what they lost. That doesn't diminish your value. that doesn't change your truth. You are not broken because someone else couldn't meet you where you stood. You are not too much because your love was honest. You are healing, and healing takes more strength than hiding ever could. Keep showing up for yourself. Keep holding the line between what you gave and what you need. Keep trusting that those who are meant to walk with you will not run from depth. They will not fear your softness. They will not mistake your strength for pressure. They will stay. But before they arrive, you must become your own anchor. You must choose yourself without apology, without waiting for validation. Because when you rise from this pain, you rise as someone unshakable, and that version of you is unstoppable. Keep rising. When your love is met with distance, it can feel like rejection. But it's not always about you. Some people are not rejecting your love. They're rejecting the mirror it holds up, because real connection reveals the wounds they've buried. It forces them to confront parts of themselves they've never dared to face. And for those not ready, it's easier to walk away than to grow. Avoidance isn't the absence of feeling. It's the refusal to face feeling. It's the armor built around pain so old they forgot when it began. But your presence, your vulnerability, your steady heart, it cracked that armor. And that terrified them more than you'll ever know. Still, you're the one left with the silence. You're the one asking questions into an empty room. You're the one fighting to not blame yourself. And that's the part that takes strength most people will never understand. To be abandoned emotionally and still choose to stay emotionally honest. To not shut down, to not become what hurt you, to not numb your way out of healing. That's resilience. That's emotional courage. That's what separates you from the ones who run. They may appear calm, but the truth is they're at war with themselves. You, on the other hand, are becoming whole. Slowly, painfully, but powerfully. It's okay to miss them and still know you deserve more. It's okay to remember the good and still accept the ending. You're allowed to feel everything: grief, anger, compassion, confusion. None of those feelings make you weak. They make you human. And being human in a world that encourages numbing is revolutionary. Every tear you cried was a step toward clarity. Every moment you didn't chase, didn't beg, didn't lower your standards. That was healing in motion. Because healing isn't loud. It's quiet choices that build into a life you're proud of. It's refusing to carry what was never yours. It's realizing that love without safety is not enough. If someone avoids you after the breakup, it's not because they feel nothing. It's because they feel too much and have no idea how to sit with it. They shut down to protect themselves from the very intimacy they once claimed to want. But you don't need to witness their regret to validate your worth. You don't need their confession to heal. You are not waiting for closure. You are creating it. Not through their actions, but through your decisions. Through the way you show up for yourself now. Through the way you choose peace over chaos, self-respect over confusion, growth over comfort. Keep going, even when it hurts. Keep trusting, even when it's hard. Because the version of you that's emerging from this heartbreak is someone fierce. Someone clear. Someone who will never settle again. You didn't lose them. You found yourself. And that is the greatest gift of all. Not everyone gets there, but you are. You're doing the work. You're rising from ashes without bitterness. That's real strength. That's real healing. That's your power now. Some people hurt quietly, not with words, not with tears, but with silence. Their hurt hides in the way. They vanish from conversations they once craved. In the way they scroll endlessly, seeking distraction from emotions they cannot name. In the way they post like they've moved on. But behind every filtered smile is a battle to forget what they're still feeling. Avoidant behavior after a breakup is not a sign of healing. It's a sign of struggle without expression. It's the heart's emergency exit when it feels unsafe to stay. But just because someone runs doesn't mean they've stopped caring. It means they're overwhelmed by what caring now demands. True connection is terrifying for those who always cope by shutting down. Vulnerability isn't natural for everyone. It's learned. And when it hasn't been practiced, it feels like danger. So when you opened up, when you offered depth and presence and truth, it may have stirred feelings they had no capacity to hold. And instead of leaning in, they leaned out. Not because they didn't feel something, but because they felt more than they could handle. Yet instead of communicating, they withdrew. Instead of owning their pain, they masked it. And now, you're the one trying to make sense of silence that speaks volumes. This is not your burden to carry. Their healing is not your responsibility. Their distance is not a reflection of your value. You did not cause their avoidance. You triggered their awareness, and that awareness was too much. But you must not confuse their coping mechanisms with clarity. Avoidance is not wisdom. Emotional shutdown is not maturity, and your longing for answers cannot override your need for peace. The closure you seek will never come from someone who cannot face themselves. It will come when you stop searching their actions for meaning and start listening to what your own heart has always known. You deserve someone who chooses connection over comfort, someone who can sit in discomfort without fleeing, someone who can love you without needing to disappear to feel safe. Emotional availability is not too much to ask. It's the foundation of anything real. And anything less will always leave you guessing, always leave you reaching, always leave you doubting yourself. You are not hard to love. You are hard to manipulate. You are not too intense. You are deeply alive, and that will intimidate anyone still hiding from themselves. But that's not your fault. That's not your flaw. That's your power. Let them go if they cannot meet you in truth. Let them wrestle with their silence while you build your strength. Let their avoidance be the reminder that you need connection rooted in courage. You've done enough questioning. You've done enough analyzing. Now is the time for choosing. Choosing you. Choosing peace. Choosing to believe that real love won't run from the light. Real love will stay. And until it finds you, stay with yourself. Because you are the one you've been waiting for. And you are finally here. Avoidance is not a solution. It's a delay of truth, of healing, of growth. When someone avoids after a breakup, it may seem like strength on the surface, but avoidance is often the disguise of emotional paralysis. Deep inside, they feel. Deep inside, they remember. But instead of processing, they suppress. Instead of confronting, they escape. This isn't peace. It's pressure building silently. And every moment they pretend not to care, the weight of what they're hiding gets heavier. That pain doesn't disappear. It burrows. It festers. It transforms into restlessness, confusion, even regret. But they won't always admit that. Some would rather carry emotional tension than admit they still hurt. That doesn't mean you're supposed to carry it for them. You're not here to wait for someone to outgrow their fear. You're not meant to shrink your light so someone else can feel more comfortable in the dark. If they're hurting but silent, distant but lingering, it's not your job to decode the mixed signals. Their pain is not your permission to stay attached to potential. You saw something real. You felt something real. But real connection needs two people who are both willing to feel, not just one. You can't build a relationship with a wall. And you can't grow when you're always chasing someone who runs from depth. This is where your strength gets tested. Not in how much you can endure, but in how clearly you can see what you deserve. Your worth is not proven by how long you wait for them to return. It's revealed by how boldly you walk forward, even when your heart still aches. Even when the silence feels like punishment. Even when your love was real and theirs was hidden under layers of fear. You loved with openness. That's courage. You showed up fully. That's power. You faced the discomfort they tried to avoid. That's growth. Do not let their distance make you doubt your own depth. Healing doesn't come from being chosen by the wrong person. It comes from choosing yourself in the presence of rejection. It comes from realizing that someone's inability to love you back in the way you need isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their readiness. Emotional maturity cannot be forced, and you cannot convince someone to meet you at the level they've spent their life avoiding. Let their absence remind you that your presence deserves to be met, not managed, not postponed, not half felt, fully. You don't have to harden. You don't have to mirror their avoidance. Stay open, but stay wise. Keep your heart soft, but guarded by clarity. The pain you feel now is temporary, but the lesson it brings is permanent. You're not losing love. You're learning who's capable of holding it. And the more you learn, the more you become. Not broken, not abandoned, but awakened, unshaken, strong. You've come too far to go numb. You're not meant to disappear with them. You're meant to rise without them. And you will. The more you rise, the clearer everything becomes. You begin to see what used to confuse you. That silence wasn't strength. That detachment wasn't peace. It was fear pretending to be control. It was pain pretending to be power. When someone avoids after a breakup, they don't just avoid you. They avoid truth, accountability, and the discomfort of emotional vulnerability. But avoidance always has a cost. It robs connection. It stunts growth. And most of all, it delays healing. You may think they've moved on. You may convince yourself they're not hurting. But avoidance isn't absence of pain. It's pain with no direction. Pain that has nowhere to go, so it stays. Quiet, hidden, but still alive. You don't need to envy their calm, because deep inside, they're fighting a storm they won't name. You've faced yours. You've felt every ache. You've sat with your grief. That's not weakness. That's how healing begins. While they run from the fire, you walked through it. You chose discomfort over denial. That alone proves your strength. Most people won't do what you've done. They'll distract themselves with noise, with people, with fake smiles and temporary highs. But you chose to stay present. You didn't fake being okay. You chose the truth, even when it hurt. And now, even through the pain, you're growing. Every silent night, every unanswered question, every wave of sadness, it's shaping something deeper in you, a stronger sense of self, a clearer view of what love should feel like. You're learning that love isn't supposed to confuse. It's not supposed to vanish when things get hard. It's not supposed to punish you with silence. Real love stays. It leans in. It doesn't run when emotions rise. And the love you gave, it was real. It was honest. But not everyone is ready for that kind of depth. That doesn't mean you gave too much. It means you've reached a level most haven't. You're no longer chasing surface level affection. You want depth, safety, presence. And now you're becoming someone who will never settle for less again. Let this pain sharpen your standards. Let it purify your path. Let it remind you that you don't have to convince anyone to care, to try, or to stay. If they're meant to meet you, they will meet you at the level of clarity you now require. And if they can't, you won't bend to fit their comfort zone. You'll walk forward with grace because this isn't about them anymore. This is about you finally choosing peace over patterns, alignment over attachment, self-respect over silent suffering. You've waited long enough. You've questioned yourself enough. Now it's time to breathe without needing permission, to feel whole without waiting for closure, to rise not with bitterness, but with wisdom. You're not broken. You're becoming. And every day you keep showing up for yourself, you make that transformation real. Not someday. Not eventually. Now. Keep rising. Keep healing. Keep becoming everything their avoidance couldn't stop. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself that suffered in silence to keep peace. You don't owe anyone the watered down version of your truth just because they weren't ready for its volume. You are no longer available for relationships that require you to shrink to be accepted. No longer willing to abandon yourself just to feel temporarily seen. There is a difference between being chosen and being tolerated. And now you know that your worth isn't up for debate. Not anymore. Because when you've faced the kind of pain that empties you to your core, you come back with fire. You come back with a standard. You come back knowing that survival wasn't enough. You're here to thrive. It's time to stop measuring your value based on someone else's inability to appreciate it. You are not their fear. You are not their absence. You are not the silence they gave when your heart was wide open. You are the courage that kept showing up. You are the strength that kept standing even when everything inside you was collapsing. And from this moment forward, your healing is no longer a reaction. It's a declaration, a bold decision that you are no longer waiting for them to return, apologize, or explain. You're not waiting to be chosen. You're choosing yourself fully, completely, unapologetically. You were never too much. You were honest. You were present. You were trying. And those things can be intimidating to someone still running from their own depth. But that's not your burden to carry. You're done interpreting your value through someone else's hesitation. You are clarity in a world that fears transparency. You are light in a room that got used to shadows. Let them stay where they are if they choose. You're not reaching back anymore. You're reaching forward because what you seek now is alignment, not attention. Substance, not survival. Truth, not comfort. The space they left behind is not empty. It's filled with possibility. It's filled with power. It's filled with everything they couldn't hold. And now it belongs to you. You get to redesign your life around peace, around boundaries, around depth that doesn't disappear when tested. You get to build from strength instead of fear, from truth instead of confusion. And the moment you stop needing their closure is the moment you give yourself permission to create your own. Closure is not found in their return. It's found in your decision to stop waiting for it. This is where the cycle ends. This is where your evolution begins. Every tear was a seed. Every moment of silence was soil. And now, what's rising in you is not bitterness. It's rebirth. You are not who you were before they broke you. You are who you became because you refused to stay broken. And that version of you, that is the version who never begs again. That is the version who knows that silence isn't rejection. It's redirection towards something greater, something whole, something real. And now you rise not as someone waiting for permission, but as someone who finally remembers who they are. You are no longer here to be small, polite, or quiet about your purpose. You are here to be fully expressed, fully alive, fully present in the power you once doubted. Because nothing grows in self-rejection. Nothing expands when you shrink, and nothing changes when you keep betraying yourself just to keep others comfortable. The time has come to make peace with your past, not by forgetting it, but by refusing to be defined by it. What hurt you no longer holds you. What broke you no longer owns you. You've earned the right to let go. You don't heal by pretending it didn't happen. You heal by refusing to let it continue controlling your thoughts, your voice, your future. Every time you dimmed your light to fit into places too small for your truth, you chipped away at the foundation of your identity. But the rebuilding has already begun. It started the moment you got tired of pretending. The moment you realized that your silence wasn't protecting your peace. It was suppressing your potential. You don't need to play weak to be accepted. You don't need to lower your frequency just to feel understood. The right ones won't flinch at your fire. The right environment will never require your soul to go into hiding. Every moment you doubted your worth was a doorway back to yourself. You were never lost, just buried beneath layers of fear, of noise, of expectations that didn't belong to you. And now you're peeling them off, one breath at a time, one choice at a time, choosing discomfort over stagnation, choosing truth over approval, choosing to become who you were before the world told you who to be. And in that choice, you are no longer surviving. You are creating space for peace, creating boundaries that protect your energy, creating standards that reflect your value. You are not the version of you that begged for love. You are not the one who waited for validation that never came. You are the one who made it through. You are the one who rose. Not because life made it easy, but because you decided you were worth the fight. You are becoming the person your pain was preparing you to be. Stronger, not in spite of it, but because of it. Wiser, not through perfection, but through perseverance. No longer afraid of starting over. No longer attached to the version of life that collapsed. Because you now understand that collapse wasn't the end. It was the clearing. And in this clearing, you build without compromise. You grow without apology. You speak without shrinking. Because this time, you're not building for anyone else. You're building from truth. You're building from alignment. And most of all, you're building from love, real love, the kind that begins within and never asks you to be anything less than everything you are.